Hello everyone. In this video we're going to learn about the structure and function of the heart. So we need to be able to describe the flow of blood through the heart and its associated blood vessels, and we need to explain what cardiac output is and how it is calculated. Now I know we looked at the structure of the heart and the path of blood flow last week, but we'll just do a quick recap just now just to make sure it's fresh in your mind. So we have a surface view from the front of the heart here. You can see the four chambers and you can see some of the associated blood vessels. And this view is a view from the back of the heart. Okay, again, you can see some of the chambers and the associated blood vessels. Okay. There will also be a video about a heart dissection, so you will actually be able to see a real heart and compare the diagram to the actual real heart. Okay. So this slide shows the path of blood flow. It should be familiar because we looked at this in the previous key area. So just to quickly recap, deoxygenated blood arrives back at the heart through the vena cava. It enters the right atrium and is pumped into the right ventricle. And then as the right ventricle contracts, the blood is forced out through the pulmonary artery where it goes to the lungs. And in the lungs, the blood picks up its oxygen, it gets rid of its carbon dioxide, and the newly oxygenated blood returns to the left side of the heart via the pulmonary veins, where it enters the left atrium, is pumped into the left ventricle, and then the left ventricle pumps and the blood leaves the heart through the aorta, with all the arteries branching off the aorta to take blood to the various organs of the body. Also very important are the valves. The valves between the atria and the ventricles are called the atrioventricular valves, and then the valves in the two arteries are referred to as the semilunar valves. We will talk more about the function of the heart valves in the video on the cardiac cycle. An important point to know about the differences between the left and right ventricles: the muscle in the left ventricle is much thicker than the muscle of the right ventricle, and that is because the left ventricle has to pump blood all around the body, whereas the right ventricle only has to pump blood to the lungs. Okay, and again, if you watch the video on the heart dissection, you will actually be able to see the difference on a real heart. Okay, let's talk about cardiac output. Cardiac output is the volume of blood that is pumped through each ventricle per minute. In order to be able to work out the cardiac output, we need to know two other values. We need to know the heart rate in beats per minute, and we need to know the stroke volume, which is the volume of blood ejected by the ventricles during each contraction. If we know both of those values, then we can use a formula to work out the cardiac output. The formula is cardiac output equals heart rate multiplied by stroke volume. You can rearrange that formula so that if you know two of those values, you can work out the third. Okay, so heart rate equals cardiac output divided by stroke volume, and stroke volume equals cardiac output divided by heart rate. It's very similar to working out speed, distance and time in maths. So the left and right ventricles pump the same volume of blood through the aorta and the pulmonary artery when they contract. And this allows us to work out, that's what the stroke volume is, which allows us to work out the cardiac output. Now, cardiac output will vary from person to person. For an athlete, the cardiac output may be anywhere from 30 to 35 litres per minute, because a trained heart has got a larger volume, so it can pump more blood with each beat. And non-athletes' cardiac output may be closer to 20 litres per minute. What we're going to do now is we're going to practice some cardiac output calculations using the formula. Okay, so I will do the first one as a demonstration. So the body at rest has a stroke volume of 60 millilitres and a heart rate of 60 beats per minute. So using the formula, cardiac output equals heart rate times stroke volume. For this person, the cardiac output equals 60 times 60, which equals 3,600. Now, this is where we have to be very careful, because the units for stroke volume are given in millilitres. The units for cardiac output, they're wanting in litres per minute. So we're going to have to convert this, because that is in millilitres, we need to convert it to litres. So 3,600 millilitres per minute, if we divide by 1,000, is 3.6 litres per minute. So pause the video now and use the formula to work out the remaining two cardiac outputs. So using the formula, during gentle exercise, the cardiac output has increased to 8.4, and during strenuous exercise, the cardiac output has increased to 14.4 litres per minute. This time, we're going to work out the stroke volume. So I'm going to do the little triangle up in the corner here. Cardiac output is heart rate times stroke volume. Okay, so the stroke volume is cardiac output divided by heart rate. So to work out the stroke volume of this person at rest, we are going to need to do 5 divided by 72. Now, checking the units, the cardiac output's in litres per minute and they're wanting the stroke volume in litres, so that's fine. When we get our answer, that's absolutely fine. 5 divided by 72 is 0.07. Right, again, pause the video just now and work out the other 3 stroke volumes. So using the formula, stroke volume is cardiac output divided by heart rate. We would have 11 divided by 100 for mild exercise, which gives us 0.11. For moderate, we would have 13.4 divided by 120, which would be 0.112. And then for heavy exercise and trained athletes, we would have 30 divided by 200, which gives us 0.15. Okay. Now you can see that as we increase the intensity of the exercise, the stroke volume is actually increasing. Okay. So your heart will be pumping out more blood with each beat as you increase the intensity of your exercise. Okay, and stroke volume is highest amongst trained athletes because their hearts are very strong. They can pump more blood with each beat, so they have a higher stroke volume. Right, final question for this video. You have to work out the percentage increase in cardiac output in an individual whose pulse rate rises from 75 to 120 beats per minute and whose stroke volume increases from 80 to 100 millilitres per beat. So, pause the video and have a go at working that out, and then you can come back and check if you're correct. So in order to work this one out, there's 3 things we need to know. We need to know the initial cardiac output, we need to know the final cardiac output, and then we need to calculate the percentage increase. So if you were struggling a little bit to know what to do, you might just want to pause now and see if that's helped a little bit. Right, so first calculation is working out the initial cardiac output. So cardiac output equals heart rate multiplied by stroke volume. The heart rate is 75 beats per minute, the stroke volume is 80, 75 multiplied by 80 is 6,000 millilitres per minute or 6 litres per minute. The final cardiac output is 120 multiplied by 100, which is 12,000 millilitres per minute or 12 litres per minute. The final thing we need to do then is to work out the percentage increase. So the increase of 12 litres minus 6 litres is 6 litres per minute. We divide that by the initial value, which was 6. So 6 divided by 6 multiplied by 100 gives us an answer of a 100% increase in cardiac output.